Welcome to the Reality Revolution. I'm so excited. We have a very incredible guest. We have Jonathan Hammond. Jonathan is a Maui-based author, spiritual teacher, energy healer, shamanic practitioner. He's a graduate of Harvard University and the University of Michigan. Go Wolverines. He has studied shamanism, meditation, energy healing, and the chakras with some of the most prominent teachers and healers in North and South America, as well as apprenticeships with shamans of Brazil, Bali, Nicaragua, Mexico, and Hawaii. He has this amazing new book, The Shamanic Mind, and I've gotten a chance to read from it, the Shaman's Mind, sorry about that. I've gotten a chance to read from it. It's got some amazing information about Kuna practices, and so I was excited to get a chance to talk to Jonathan. Welcome to the Reality Revolution, Jonathan.
It's so great to be here. Aloha to you and to everyone. Really nice to be here.
Aloha. So, from that background, you have a ton of background. It's very unusual for people to graduate from Harvard and then become shamans that are focused on Reiki. So, you talk a little bit about your story in your book, The Shaman's Mind, but please share your background, your origin story to everyone that's listening.
Yeah, well, I was as a child, I was an incredible mimic, and my parents thought actor because it certainly seemed like that, and so I sort of was on that path for about the first 35 years of my life. But I was never a fame-driven actor. It was more about the artistry. And what I found is, if you think of acting, acting is about reading a script and going, what kind of person would say that, and then that emerging from the inside. So it's a very empathic attunement. And what I found in pursuing acting, I was successful. I was a theater actor in New York. Was that I kept having this feeling of I'd always been spiritual. I'd always had private clients, which was kind of in the closet because I had this outward persona that wasn't that. But I was always doing healing work from the time I was in my mid-20s, and then it just started becoming bigger and taking up more space. And then I found myself getting these great acting jobs and thinking to myself, I don't like this. I don't want to be here. I can't wait for it to be over so I can go back to my healing work. And so there was a certain moment where after hundreds of thousands of dollars in student loans and all of that, but there was a moment where it was all the signs were saying, and some of them I wrote about in my book. Some of them happened here on Maui. That it was time to really make a shift and a shift in my life and become a professionally spiritual person, which is what I certainly became. And it was when you find the right life and you actually align with what your soul is wanting for you, a lot of yeses appeared. And there was a lot of yeses in my life. And within 3 or 4 years, I was teaching at the Omega Institute and had a full, very busy practice in New York City, which has now been transferred here. And it's international. I see people from all over the world. And I don't miss acting at all. And in some ways, I feel like it's much of the same skill set. I don't mean that I'm putting something on. I mean more that empathic attunement that I had in my artistry, I'm using now. And even the reason why I call my book The Shaman's Mind was because that empathic attunement, I'm not a shaman. I don't think of myself that way. I don't need that mantle. That's not interesting to me. I don't care. But the idea that I can empathically attune with how the shamans think, how the people in indigenous cultures who are in rapport with nature, direct, interdependent, symbiotic relationship with nature, I do have a sense of how they think, and because I'm empathically attuned to them, and so that mind is available to me. So I'm a garden variety natural healer. That's what I am. It's just that it's all informed by the shamanic perspective.
You share a very interesting story at the beginning
Yeah.
of your book about when you visit Haleakala, the crater and volcanic crater. Please share that story. That seemed to be pretty poignant and significant, a part of your story as why you're in Maui now and where you had this huge awakening.
Well, I had been tortured for a while about making this change, and my spirit was really calling me to do something else. I had training in Hawaiian shamanism at that point. I did training in lots of different shamanism and worked with shamans in I don't know 4 different continents or something, and There was a moment where I was on vacation here, and I used to come on vacation here a lot because it was a tax write-off to come to Maui when you're writing a book on Hawaiian shamanism. So I came here a lot, and I was on the volcano, the Haleakala, which is now a dormant volcano, and it's very peaceful up there. It's a sense that whatever whatever Pele's anger is, it's not here anymore. She's done her work here and she's moved on. And you know, I had a peak spiritual experience. And just to name, when we have peak spiritual experiences, they tend to be outside. They tend to be in ecology. And it was just a sense of I was sitting up looking at a vista, and clouds came over me, and there was a kind of a white out, and I was some force like a train came at me in such a way that I had to kind of fall backward onto the rocks. And you know, lava rocks are sharp, and yet it was the most comfortable laying back on these rocks, like I was in this reclining chair. It's scary though. And there was a sense of I knew that it knew that I knew that it knew, you know, one of those experiences that I was just, you know, with it. And the message was you have to change your life, that you have to make a change. And then I took pictures of myself with my cell phone just because I wanted to remember the experience, not to share with anyone. And walked back up the you know, the volcano, and thought I'm gonna change my life. And I really did. About a week later, called my agent, said I'm done. I'm set up shop, you know, with an office in New York, etc. And then when I got home and I looked at the pictures, there was my spirit animal is a turtle, and the turtles have been showing up forever in my life, a whole bunch of different ways and meanings. And in the rock, and I actually posted the picture in my book because it was so unmistakable. There is a sculpture in the lava of a turtle looking literally at my head, right at me when I was having this experience. And it was so crazy. So I asked my publisher. I said, I know this is just a picture from my iPhone, but you have to publish it because it's because when I got home, it was this real like this moment of full circle and all of that. And you know, and turtle more than anything else is about it's about the earth. It's about the earth mother. It's about like you know, the turtle has 28 little segments, and then 13 little segments representing the you know, the 28 days of each month, and the 13 segments of the moon. And I mean, it's very connected to earth wisdom. And so that really, there are a lot of other experiences. I think we've all had these kind of peak experiences, but that one was I'm not going to turn back. I have to follow this. Yeah.
Yeah, those moments are so amazing and astounding, and it's I love to hear when other people share theirs,
Yeah.
because you know, what can you do after you have that experience? You got to change everything, and so um,
Yeah.
you talk about Huna and some of the older indigenous Hawaiian magic systems in your book. First of all,
Mhm.
I'm wondering, have you ever read Max Freedom Long? We've been
Sure.
studying that in our group, and that was like, I think it might have been 100 years ago. This school teacher shows up in Hawaii, and he starts talking to the locals, and they have these amazing practices that he's doing where they're healing with their hands. You know, people are seeing spirit animals. People are coming back from the dead is the things that he would talk about. The incorporating a relationship with the higher self and the low self, that sort of dichotomy. And
Mhm.
so I've learned a lot from it, but I got the feeling we were just getting the basics, and there's
Mhm.
this rich culture and diversity of knowledge. So I'm excited to hear what you've picked up on it from your learning, and really you've moved to Maui,
Mhm.
right? And
Yeah.
so, you know, share with me some of what you've learned in that experience. This one thing people don't know about Hawaii in general is that Hawaii was an advanced technological society. They had trains before everybody else. They had a democratic system. You know, it's a real shame what happened to Hawaii. You know, they were this amazing society that was advanced. They were not like
Newspapers, tons of newspapers. They were,
right.
yeah, yeah.
Everybody could read. They had a great educational system. The healthcare system was amazing. It's just like a tragedy. What happened, a lot has been lost. So it's important, even for us white people that show up, to bring this knowledge to everyone else because so much has been lost.
Well, there are two things that about that. One is it's not just Hawaii. There's something called traditional ecological knowledge, TEK, and that is
Hmm.
essentially the spiritual and lived and relational uh, uh, context that indigenous cultures have with their land. They actually know something about. They are in conversation with their land. They know what it needs. They know its personality. They know what it doesn't need, and they are attuned to the spiritual dimension behind that land, and when Westerners came and uh, just forgot. We didn't even acknowledge that knowledge, and it is knowledge. It is actual knowledge. It's not knowledge that is necessarily scientifically based, but it totally, but it is knowledge, and that was lost in so many cultures. When the Lahaina fires happened here, the next day, this happened about 20 miles away from me. The next day, I mean, the whole town burned. The original kingdom of Hawaii, the entire thing burned, and black smoke in the sky all night and all that. And the next day, I woke up, and all the news was conspiracy theories and Chinese laser beams and aliens
Right.
and UFO, and all these things. And I thought to myself, this is fire, this is air, this is climate change that has caused winds so strong from a hurricane 600 miles away that the current infrastructure could not hold it. This was Lahaina used to be the kind of Venice of Hawaii. It was a very water inland lakes and all of that. That water got diverted 100 years ago because of sugarcane, and so it was dry as a bone. And the last vestiges of aloha in some way were behind glass in the museums there.
Hmm.
And I think the mother said it's time to unleash this, and it's time to a do-over. When you think of fire, fire it transmutes, it changes things, changes form, and it was like a real like do-over. And actually that actually moved the needle on indigenous rights, that fire. So it did have those sort of implications as well. And so I had this thought, and then I found out a couple days later, because of my empathic attunement with this culture, that the Hawaiian elders were thinking much the same thing. And that's not because I'm so special. That's just because I'm tuned to it.
Right.
So I'm not selling cultural appropriation. I'm selling empathy of a culture that knows something that we don't.
Exactly. Yeah, the whole idea of cultural appropriation is just a shame because now people are afraid to enter into cultural mindsets because you can learn so much as you have explained, almost
Right.
mimicking. It's like a state. It's like a state of mind that you can enter, like a flavor of food, and it's you need to enter into that mindset. And so the idea that you're culturally appropriating when you do that pushes people away from opening up to these different cultures.
And there's these amazing young anthropologists that I'm reading right now. Anthropologists. I'm a super spiritual guy,
Right.
but well, and anthropology is about studying a culture. But traditionally, it's taking my Western mind and my Western scientific mechanistic model of what the world is, studying the culture, and then reporting back to those Westerners what that culture believes.
Mhm.
But there's this new anthropology that is about I'm going to go to that culture and I'm going to get inside of it, and I'm going to experience their rituals, I'm going to experience their ceremonies, and I'm going to actually see the world through their eyes. And then what's happening with these anthropologists is they're going, I don't want to leave. I don't want to
Right.
report on that. I actually don't want to leave. That's actually a better way of being. And I think that's in some way what Joanna Macy was getting at in some way, that that there's something inside that is where we find home again, where we find that we are in direct conversation and relationship with the natural world. I don't think I'm not going to do any Christian bashing, but I don't think Genesis chapter 1 did us many favors when it said dominion over the earth, subdue the earth, for you humans gain. And so in that moment, and eco-critics talk about that, that is one of the most consequential things that was ever written about what would happen ecologically. Because what we did in that moment is we said, we are separate from nature, which is absurd. We are beings of nature. And nature is a dead thing, is a storehouse of resources only for us. And so we have claimed our peak role in the ecosystem, and separated ourselves from the ecosystem, and the ecosystem is suffering because of it, because we don't think of it as an extension of ourselves. You know, there's a famous quote from, I'm paraphrasing, but Joanna Macy talks about that an amputee kind of feels the pain or still feels the tinges of the severed limb,
Yeah.
and that when we feel the whales being killed, when we see the homeless person starving, when we, you know, that on some level, from this animistic perspective, from this indigenous perspective, that is a part of our body, that is an extension of our own body. And all indigenous cultures, 99% of all our ancestors, of all Homo sapiens, saw the world like that.
Yeah.
It's only been weird where we are the master identity of, you know, started about 10,000 years ago, but then really amped up, you know, a couple thousand years ago. And that separation has informed all the separation politically between each other, between certainly us and the natural world, but us with people that we don't understand, with people that we don't, you know. And so we bought this Kool-Aid, drunk this Kool-Aid about the separation, and we're a part of the whole thing. We are part of the ecosystem, and if we could start to think in that way, that's our way home.
It's like a circle. Right now, I believe that we're moving into a higher level of consciousness, and this higher level of
Yeah.
consciousness makes us empathic. When we see something terrible happening to someone, the visceral reaction worldwide, community-wide, is different than what it was when 30 years ago. When you see something terrible happening to an animal or person or the world, the reactions that you see are much more magnified. And my strong belief is that it's because of the awareness of the oneness of all. It's just we're tuning into this higher level of consciousness that the entire planet is going through. And it's like a circle because that's where we were at before. It's like those indigenous cultures that many of us look down upon were actually in a higher level of consciousness. They might not have had the technology, which is not really that important, but they were
Mhm.
tuned into this oneness, which is really a fundamental part of the next evolution of consciousness. And for some people, they don't want to acknowledge it. And some people are, if they're going through it, and so they push it away, but it's undeniable. It's undeniable. And so I see that happening with the world. It's interesting when we go back and look at these systems that we're learning from. It's we're learning to advance, even though it's ancient knowledge, right?
You just said so many wonderful things, and I want to just sort of piggyback on them. Yeah, if you think of the idea that in true indigenous mind, and the reason why I'm so fascinated with indigenous mind is because I worked with all these different shamans, and I saw them all thinking the same way. I saw their worldview, that different cultures, different practices, but on some level their worldview was the same, and I wanted inside that. And what we're really talking about is that indigenous mind is about self-awareness. I'm aware that I'm a separate self, but I am equally collectively aware. And that is, you know, that is really the shift, that I am equally. So my right hemisphere and my left hemisphere are both firing equally. That I have a holistic understanding and I have an individual understanding. And when the Westerners came here, they literally had the thought, or came to indigenous cultures, they had the thought of these primitive people don't know the difference between themselves and the environment. How can they govern themselves?
Right.
You know, which of course is not what they're getting at all. You know, so yes, you're right. In terms of the consciousness, the consciousness is coming. We got to hurry up. You know.
Yeah.
You got to shit or get off the pot here. It is now time to really recognize that that you are either in empathic relationship with yourself and the world, or you're not. And we have to do our healing, and we have to do whatever we need to do so that we are well enough to participate everything in nature by virtue of just being itself. The dandelion being the dandelion and the shark being the shark. When it is in its authentic nature, in its essence, it at the same time is contributing to the entire organism. And so we have to be in our authentic self, and we have to do healing about that. We have to get mom's ideas about what we're supposed to be, and dad's ideas and the culture's ideas out of us enough that we can find what that thing is in us, what the indigenous people call our original instructions, who we were if we weren't messed with, who we were who we would become if we were not told that men are this and women are this and money is this and all of that. What is that instinctual nature? And we can feel it. You can feel it in your body. It's a very embodied thing. And at the same time, when we do that, we automatically claim our seat as in reciprocity and contributing to the all at the same time. Everything in nature is doing that, and that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. I think one offshoot of that, it's very interesting that you mentioned that you were always a great mimic. That's a sign of a higher level of consciousness, because you're tuning into someone else's consciousness and you're able to embody it. And so some people could say it's like you're a mimic or an actor, but really what's happening, I mean, I find this as I've meditated, and I'm not like bragging, I'm just saying as I've entered a higher level of consciousness, I'll be walking by somebody on the street and I will be able to look at them and immediately just live in their world, see from their eyes, know what their struggles are, what's going on with them, what makes them happy. And it's just like an immediate knowing, like uh, we're connected to the Akashic record, which is sort of awakening. And it's like as we're around these things, as we're around people, it's like we're immediately knowing everything about them, which I'm fascinated what will happen in the future, because everybody's closets are going to be open. We're going to immediately know as I feel like it's just getting higher and higher. We're going to reach a point where we know everything about everybody. All your secrets are just there, and we just have to forgive and let it go and move on. It's
Yeah, and that empathic attunement with whatever,
if I
that's
could,
the essence of magic. That is the essence of
yes,
manifestation. That is the law of attraction, which is that I become the thing that I want to become from the inside, to the extent, or I attune to the thing that I want to become from the inside, to the extent that my version of its genius presents itself.
yes,
So it's an empathic attunement with what it is that we want. Empathy is it's a magical power we have, if we would use it as such. And the idea also that there's all these different consciousnesses in nature that are different than ours. It's now clear that the plants see and they think and they're agentive, and animals care, and even from microbes to sharks, everything has a teleology toward purpose, everything in nature. And so when we lose the biodiversity, we lose the psychodiversity of all of those different consciousnesses. And not only we might need them, but we cut ourselves off from an enchanted world that we can be in conversation with and learn from and be in relationship with. That's attuning with the consciousness of a plant is no different than attuning with the consciousness of Jesus.
yeah,
It's just another non-human, or Jesus was human, but another a spirit consciousness, and there's spirit consciousness everywhere, and that's
yeah.
that's the indigenous mind. That's the animistic mind.
What's most fascinating about Huna in particular
Yeah.
it's an incredible magic system. I'm
Hmm.
somebody as just like I'm fascinated by magic. I've read all the old occult texts and
Hmm.
stuff I shouldn't read, and Aleister Crowley and different magic systems. And Huna is simple yet complex, and when practiced and applied, is one of the most powerful and effective magic systems that has been tested over millennia,
Hmm.
that people are not aware of. When you hear that this system has been tried and true, and allows you to access your higher power with a framework that allows you to utilize that sort of is an advanced level of the law of attraction or manifestation. And you get to that in your book. You talk about the Huna basics, the Ike, Kala, and Makia. So talk to me a little bit about the magic of the Huna system that you've come upon in learning more about this.
Yeah, and I think it's important to just say when we talk about magic, all we're talking about is an earth-based way, the way people before organized religious systems came into prominence, the way in which they worked with their own energy, their own outlook, their own worldview, their own attunement with life, their own attunement with each other to create, to further life, to actually bring more life to. That's all it was. It's not evil. It's not something that is forbidden. It's not something, even the word occult is so loaded, and that just means hidden knowledge. In fact, the word Huna is just the Hawaiian word for secret, but it's not secret like something that I'm keeping from you. It's secret like something that's there but hard to see, like fine sea spray or dust. Like it's there but you can't see it. And so that's all it is. So I just want to say that because this is not spooky stuff. This is not spooky stuff. So there are 7 principles in Huna, which is seven ideas, a philosophical way of seeing the world. That if you enter into that, you enter into how these natural healers tend to think, tend to see the world, and tend to approach healing. So the first principle is comes from a Hawaiian word Ike. And the translation of that, and the translation comes from my teacher, Serge King, who's amazing. And the translation is, the world is what we think it is. Reality is what we think it is. Now, that's not just the psychological projection, that says like that I'm in a bad mood, so I'm projecting that onto something, and then this thing is what it is based on my bad mood. This is saying that this is quantum. This is about what I think actually creates form and shifts form. And what I think about and believe with consistency, my inward dream, whatever it is I'm believing and thinking about and whatever intentions I have, that my outward dream will become a physical manifestation, a physical reflection of my inward dream. That's what that principle is getting at. So certainly co-creation of reality, but it really is about like that we are. It's all mind. It's all mind at the end of the day, and that we are that we can use ours with discipline, because it's one thing to truly believe something in order to create form. I believe it sometimes. I believe it except for my taxes. I believe it except for when this is happening. I believe, but when you really actually own a belief, it's kind of like, if you take a walk in the forest and you have a belief that forest is going to give you a message to some question you have, because that forest is alive and conscious in relationship with you, you take a walk in the forest, that'll happen. The forest will start talking. If you don't have that belief, it's a nice walk in the forest. And so that we enter into different realities that are available to us, different potentials, different even, and it begins in our imagination. So the power of the mind is really, really, really untapped. And when you start entering into realities where I say, I'm going to enter into the idea that I believe that this is possible, which of course is the beginning of any project, anything that we would create, and then that outward dream manifests. So that's the first principle. Second principle, kala, which is a Hawaiian word and the translation is there are no limits. And that just means I'm not separate from anything, everything that we've been talking about, as is evidenced and epitomized in nature. And if you want to go scientific with the quantum field, there is no actual separation. Every atom affects every other atom across time and space, infinitum. That's that principle, which also means for us personally that our realized potential is not separate from our unrealized potential. It's right next to us. It is a part of us. If we are not separate from anything that we want to create, it's just a matter of going through the process of doing it. But it's a really big idea, and it opens one to the idea that I'm not alone in this world, that I have the entire power of the world, of the ecosystem, of the planet, of the spirits around the planet that just want to help, And all of those are available to me. I'm not separate from any of them. That's the nature of when shamans call in the directions, the east, west, south, north, above and below. What they're calling in is everything, you know, to enter back into and center ourselves in that unity. So there are no limits. And then the third principle is the word makia, and that word means that energy flows where our attention goes. Energy, creative energy from the universe, flows toward where we put our focus and attention. So what we put our focus and attention on with consistency will bring to us the nearest available equivalent of what we're putting our focus and attention on. Very powerful stuff.
Very powerful, and very resonant with what we know, as you said, with quantum physics, and matches a lot of very powerful and accepted manifestation systems like Neville Goddard and Joseph Murphy and the teachings of Jesus himself, you know. It's not like this is something that's contradicting anything. It goes to the essence of what I teach when I teach manifestation. And it's amazing that they were elucidating this so long ago with their own philosophy and their own culture.
Well, it sort of is a natural byproduct toward a connection with all of ecology. You know, there's something about when we claim our seat in the all, that we're plugged into so much power. You know, in shamanic practice, there's something called power loss, which is endemic in this culture, and it's nothing more than our disconnection from the natural world. I'm disconnected from all the power available to me through the environment. And if I can use my beliefs and my intention and my focus to toward something, and knowing that the universe, that our world, that our community, even the unknown factors that we will need in order to create this thing are available to us and are connected to that intention. If that intention is really part of what you're supposed to be doing, you know, I don't know that all that's going to happen just because you want a car, you know, but if it's really about that, I'm creating something based on my purpose, just like everything in nature is following its purpose, these things come into being.
Right. So tell me a little bit more of something I don't know a lot about is about the Huna beliefs about the afterlife. What exactly what is their philosophy about what happens in the next life? Do they believe in reincarnation? Is there a heaven belief? Can you explain a little bit about that?
Well, you know, let me say this. Anything that I'm saying is, I want to just name, I have no interest in anyone believing anything that I say.
Yeah.
I get the feeling with your listeners that like they've been on the path, they're thinking, they're reading stuff, they have their own, they're mystically minded. If my material provides an and, not an or, that's what I'm after.
Right,
Because
right.
I don't, I am not going to give you some definitive, idea about what happens in the afterlife. That said, pre even spirit guides, the indigenous people would think of their spirit guides as the ancestors, as their ancestors. Those were who they called on. And the idea being that these were the people who lived well and lived wisely and lived consciously to the point where, and as we age, we actually develop wisdom and we move into that stage of life, and that if we are spiritually minded, we are in collegial relationship, not please spirits, but in collegial relationship with the spirits through our lives, and that we become kind of, sorry, my dog, but
That's fine.
we become more like the spirits, and that when we pass on, we are, I don't want to come back. I don't want to do this again. I'm fine with helping on the other side, but I think some people do. Come back. I think reincarnation is a thing, I think that happens too. But for me, I think all the spirits on the other side want to do whatever that spirit is, whether or not that's Zeus or Hecate or Jesus or Buddha. I think they just want to help. That's why they hang around. That's why they haven't floated away into some cosmic ice cream. They're actually here to help us. And so, because that's what I do for a living, and that's what my life's work is based on, I'll be happy to help on the other side. And so I'm just in a collegial relationship with them, and maybe I'll, join them in some way, not as a god, but just as because I don't think a lot of those spirit guides that we call on thought of themselves mortally as some sort of a god.
Right.
So I think that happens, and I think people do come back. I think people have work to do. It just depends on where you are. But in a way, but I also think that it's just another stage of evolution. Doesn't mean I'm not scared about it. Doesn't mean I'm so special that I've transcended my fear about it. But I do. But I also very much feel that it is probably something that maybe won't feel like that big of a deal.
Right.
Like it's going to be clear, what
Yeah.
that is. Yeah.
In my own relationship with guides, that's my impression from my small little brain and my point of view in this world, is that in many cases, communicating with my ancestors and ancients who carry knowledge that is specific about my situation, and they want to help. And I get a feeling there's a universe of knowledge available. In most cases, people aren't accessing it because they're not asking, they're not open to it. And those guides are willing and open to help you. But they're never going to violate your free will or come into your head and start talking. You have to start saying, I'm open, you can talk to me. And the thing that's hardest is that people are not listening. We're in a culture, in a world where it's easier for us to talk and say, please do this, please do this. So a lot of times people are getting advice from guides and getting advice, but they're not really hearing it because they're not stopping to listen and open themselves up to that guidance. But I do feel like that's what's happening in many cases. Not always, and like you said, there's a lot we just don't know.
As though we don't know, and I also think, even when you think of problematic family members where it wasn't really resolved,
Yeah.
we all have those. That what I have found in my healing work and working with so many people is that there tends to be a kind of curriculum on the other side, where wherever that person left, that they're still evolving on, and that they actually can over time become a helping ancestor, even
Hmm.
if they weren't in this life. I very much
Yeah.
kind of think of my father as more helpful to me on the other side than he kind of was here on some level. And so, just to say that too, that there it really is evolution is that's what we're doing. That's what the universe is. And so that's gonna sort of always continue on.
It's fascinating. And you spent some time in the book talking about Ho'oponopono, something that I'm a big teacher that saved my life, and I have meditations on my channel. Please share your experience and the powers of that teaching, and maybe something we don't know about it in general for how it works.
It mirrors really, really good psychology, except transpersonal psychology, because it includes the spiritual. It is a process. It's not just a mantra that we just say and don't have an intention behind. It is actually about that there is an unconscious mind, an inner child that learned certain things about themselves based on wounds, based on the way in which they were treated, based on they learned maybe good things too, but
Hmm.
the things that we need healing on are the things that are the misbeliefs, that inner child has something other than its own perfection, and that whatever those misbeliefs about oneself are, the low self-esteem, I don't look right, my ears are too big, whatever those, I'm never gonna have money, whatever those things are, the world is unsafe, it's not my world, I'll never have a boyfriend, whatever those things are,
Hmm.
unless they're named and examined, they will keep showing up. They are the unconscious material that is informing our outward life. And they're all born of unlove. So Ho'oponopono, and the translation of that word is to make right more right, right with oneself, right with God, as below, so above, as within, so without. So the purpose of that practice is to go look at that part of us that is hurt, that is wounded, that is confused, and actually give it what the love, and the loving attention that was withheld from it that created those misbeliefs to begin with. And that's essentially just really good reparenting, that we have this part of us that is not always on board with our potential, because we learned something and it's older than our adult version. It's been around a long time. And so we go in there sort of, and we give it the attention. And those 4 phrases, I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you, to unpack them is really just about I'm giving love. I am sorry that you feel this way about yourself. I recognize it. Please forgive me for every time when I let you feel that way and I didn't do anything about it and I didn't do Ho'oponopono, and thank you for changing this, for going along with what I'm guiding you in now, just like a good parent would do to a child. And so when I found that, I thought, and I've been in therapy for, psychotherapy for 20 years, I thought this is exactly what I've been doing in psychotherapy, and the idea that there is an indigenous way to think of it, an indigenous way to approach it, and P.S. when you do that to the inner child, for the the imprints in the unconscious mind, the higher self brings you the healing energy to make that hold. And so it's got sort of I go into myself, and then in going into myself, the spirits become with spirits energies, what the Hawaiians call mana, however you think of it, that comes to us, and that's the grace of the healing. That's the energy of the healing.
There's different people that teach it differently, and
Yeah.
I'm like you. I'm a believer in starting out with I love you, I'm sorry, please forgive me, thank you. I've always found that I love you as the first phrase, but I've had people say, oh no, you're doing it wrong. You know what I'm saying? It should start with please forgive me, or I'm sorry, or like, I'm a big believer in I love you as the beginning. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I do. I mean, I feel the same. I mean, first of all, there's nothing new under the sun. There's no right way. I'm not dogmatically teaching you Ho'oponopono. It would be presumptuous for me to do so. This is just how it tends to work for me and how I understand it. But yeah, I think I love you is about that. No matter what, inner child, all bets are off. You are being held in love right now. And that we are, and when you to go back to the Huna principles, the only moral ethic that we follow is aloha. Is love present in any action, any thought, anything that we do? That's the only thing that we care about. Is love's presence here? Now, love can be I need to put up a boundary. Love can be get away from me. Love can be a whole bunch of other things, but the idea is that that's always present. And so the idea that this part of us that has gone without, that is suffering, that feels badly about itself, the idea that a loving being comes and says, let's begin with the idea that you're lovable.
Right.
And then from there we can start to address what it is that you're holding, or what misbelief you have, etc. So I start off that way too. Great minds.
Fundamental part of this philosophy is the 3 selves. We briefly mentioned it before. How can I access my higher self utilizing the Huna principles? I also, and I realize that the lower self and the middle self are just as important. They're all in balance. But I'd love to know, how I can access my higher self in general.
Well, I'm going to give you a counterintuitive answer. Start with your lower self. In fact, the higher self, or the spiritual realms, actually come to us if we are working in lower self. So what do I mean by lower self? Lower self is instinctual nature, intuitive nature, our original instructions that we access no matter how lost we are in our lives. If you can just tune into this feels right, this doesn't feel right. This feels like it's the right direction, like it's animating me towards something. This doesn't feel right. That it's in the felt sense that we access our actual essence. And in the culture, we're so pulled away from our feelings into ideas and who we're supposed to be and all that, that we are pulled away from our felt senses. And so when we actually are excavating and giving attention and creativity to our essence, the spirits are all over that, because the
Hmm.
spirits are all over the idea that we are being authentic, just like everything in the organism is being authentic, which makes the whole organism go. So a very easy way to think of it: lower self, middle self, higher self, or even shamanic lower world, middle world, upper world,
Hmm.
is the idea that you just take like a blade of grass. So underneath the blade of grass is the instinctual essence to be the blade of grass. That's the lower world. The middle world is the blade of grass, and the
Hmm.
upper world is an angel hovering over the blade of grass saying, "Grow, grow, grow, be."
Right.
And so, but the higher self or the spirits aren't necessarily going to help if the blade of grass is trying to be something other than what it is, and
Hmm.
that's how we get lost.
I understand that. So the concept you write about in the book about ego being, it's a little bit different than the way we understand ego, and it's not as bad or good, but talk about the interplay of ego. Is my ego bad? When can I follow my ego, and how that relates to this system?
Yeah, well, generally speaking, I hate the idea that it gets a bad rap in spiritual circles. We need an ego. My ego says I'm a spiritual teacher. That's why I'm here.
Hmm.
There's nothing wrong with a sense of I know what I'm good at. I know what I'm supposed to be. I know what my boundaries are. That's called adult.
Hmm.
We all need that. Um, but I think the problem is to pull from another system, the superego, which is Freud's idea of the part of the psyche that attunes to the culture. And we know what the culture is. Just turn on the television; it's not cute, you know.
Hmm.
And that part of the psyche is learned to attune to outward circumstances, to cultural conditioning, and we are all our superegos are very overly developed, and we are pulled away from ourselves and pulled into the overculture, which loves it because the overculture is about adhere to us. You're to be obedient and send the money up. That's that culture. And so when we try to assimilate to that, so I think the ego is about the part that says I'm not going to do that. I'm actually going to follow my own instinctual and intuitive drive toward what I want to become, not what you think I should become.
Hmm.
You know. So does that help?
Yeah, that makes sense. One of my favorite parts of the book is the Makia practices. You have some really interesting techniques and practices, a breathing technique, candle magic. So, I've always been a fan of using candles, in order to, focus my energy and learn how to use my energy. So I'd love for you to talk, about that as you discuss in the book.
Yeah, well, so Makia, energy flows where our attention goes. Energy, creative energy, it follows our focus and attention. And this is the essence of all spell work, of all manifestation. So a very
Mhm.
simple one is you get a candle. I like 7-day candles just because they last longer. You hold the candle, and maybe you're trying to manifest money. You're trying to manifest a Hawaiian vacation. So maybe it's a green candle for money, or a blue candle for the Pacific Ocean, or whatever. Maybe you carve the words into it. Again, it's just about focusing attention. You could do this without any props,
Mhm.
but the idea is that it gives you a focused attention, and then you kind of you think about this thing that you want to create. The most important thing, feel the feelings of what it would be like for this thing to come into being. You self-advocate to the spirits and say, please bring me this. This is a part of my purpose. This is a part of like why I'm here. This is and I order them around. I really do. I really say like this is something that I need. This is not I want this on behalf of my walk on this earth. This is part why I need this for my purpose. And so you kind of give it that attention, and then hold it, give it energy, give it attention. And I like the 7 day because once it lights, it's there for 7 days, and everything. And if you put it in glass, you can just leave it burning. Be careful, but you can leave it burning. And the
Right.
idea is every time you look at it, you're affirming that intention, and you're thinking this is sending off that said, you still got to do what you got to do to make the thing happen from a physical action point of view as well.
Right.
But it really does help focus the attention. The problem is whenever we want to create anything, what's going to come up automatically? Fear and doubt.
Hmm.
And the fear and doubt has to be at least 49%, if not less,
Right.
because if it's more than that, if we actually have a belief, going back to the first principle of Huna, that this thing that we want to create isn't going to happen for us, then we're not going to create it. So feed the potential, starve the doubt. Feed the potential, starve the
Yeah.
doubt. That's the focus of doing it, and giving it emotion, or what the Hawaiians call a ha. Giving it that extra energy. That
Right.
extra energy through advocating and through really wanting this, being excited about it. Really does help too.
Yeah, it's an ongoing process. I mean, any technique is always just going to be that, and manifestation is be always going to be beyond technique. You're constantly thinking and constantly wishing, constantly feeling, but it's a way of focusing in those moments. What I find great about candle magic is that you can sit and meditate and you can kind of get lost. The candle just gives you that selective thing to focus and garner your energy as you go
Right.
about what you're doing. That and you read back in the old magic books from the 1800s, and the adept would always have to stare at the candle before they could go to the next level, and they would have to garner the focus and concentration to be able to sit and be able to focus in the candle and make the flame move and become one with the candle, right? So
Yeah, magic it's an art of will.
exactly.
Art of will. Yeah, for sure. And if you to be a magical person or an alchemist, or just creating a good life for yourself, the words are creative engagement. If you are creatively engaged with what's happening, and that includes your feelings, because that's what we avoid. We don't want to feel those things that, if we have that feeling of I'm in the wrong job, it can be a very scary feeling, and so we don't want to feel that feeling. And yet, if
Mhm.
we're not actually beginning to take action on moving to a different job. So creatively engaging with what's happening, that's what everything in nature is doing all the time. It's going after what brings it life. It's wildly interested in that which will grow it, and wildly disinterested in that which won't. And it's in a constant process of creatively engaging with that toward life. And so we
Yeah.
have to awake to that for ourselves.
I'd like to talk about the role of breathing. There's another author, it's a woman, Evelyn, I think she taught about mana, and in particular, the focus of her teaching from the Huna culture was it's really about breathing, like holding the breath and focusing the breath and utilizing those periods of breathing to access the high and low selves. So I'd love to know about what you've learned about utilizing breathing techniques and accessing our magical essence.
Um, I think that we don't really breathe, do we? We don't
No, we don't.
really consciously do that. The breath, what breath is, spirit is the word, is comes from the Greek breath, and so the idea is that our breath is what is fueling everything, so there are lots of different techniques and different ways of thinking about it, but the idea of just um, with your focus, just breathing as you think about, or breathing in as you think about whatever it is that you want to create, or even breathing in, imagining that you can breathe in the power of a waterfall, the power of the plants, the power of, or go outside, and as you breathe, imagine that you are breathing in the energy of nature, and you're filling yourself up with the power of all of that. It's a transmission that happens, and that's mana, which is the power from within. And so the idea is the idea of breathing with something that's powerful is that empathic attunement,
Mhm.
and even the idea that we are actually breathing with the plants right now, uh, and,
Mm,
and and that with the entire kingdom of nature. And
mhm.
so when we start opening to that, we start opening to a different sense of who we are. That's I that's often called the ecological self. This idea of that I'm in relationship to the all, and so my breath comes from the all,
Yeah.
and what I do serves the all. That's the way to think of it.
I always think that science catches up at some point, and a lot of the stuff we're talking about will be scientific in the future. And one thing I think will happen is that there'll be scientific proof that when we're out in nature, that there's different energies, that different photons, that there's actual the nature of the energy and the interaction with our body is different than when we're not out in nature. I just feel like because it's so powerful when I'm walking in nature in different contexts. I just know that there's something more to this that I feel like it could be verified. Like if I had instruments out, I could confirm this, and maybe we'll learn that someday, right?
And you know what? There's a part of me that thinks I don't give a shit because I can feel it. And I think,
Exactly.
and
We
I
don't need to
also
know.
think we have to, also think we have to name there is a mystery. When
Yeah.
you think of fate, which is not a word we talk a lot about in spiritual context, but the idea of the fated dynamics of me, these looks, that family, that sexuality, that this time on the planet, those are
Mhm.
things that I didn't choose. Those are things that I can't measure or figure out why. I can only attune to them mystically and creatively and work with them.
So
And they
true.
came from somewhere. And they came from where what I believe is the mother, is the which is a dark womb of everything and nothing. That
Yeah,
is that we emerge from that, and you can't measure her.
you
You
can't.
can't measure her. You can't. And I think that's important too.
Well
And
said.
I think if we wait for the empirical data on the idea of on the paranormal, or on the supernatural, we're missing what is clearly happening. You know, so I think that that's important too.
Yeah.
Like the Gaia theory, this idea from 1979 that says the Earth behaves as one organism. Used to be a hypothesis, now it's a theory.
Mhm.
And any in Earth-based person goes, duh. I'm glad that some scientists from NASA came up with this idea. But not only is it one organism, but everything has a consciousness.
Yeah.
But we're still waiting. But try to measure that. But you can feel it and you can sense it you know
I
so
just
just
find in teaching, and you probably know certain people need to have a certain kind of teaching for them to accept it. They need the scientific. I mean, I think it's almost masculine. There's a
totally,
masculine perspective, and they just need to know a little bit about the workings
it's
behind the
masculine.
scenes. And then the feminine is like, I'm
Yeah.
down. I'm open to it. I love the mystery of it. Sometimes I find myself I'm speaking to those groups, and then there's a part of me that wants to also speak to that person that's like, that's not true. There's no scientific. No, no, there is. This is scientific too. That's what I just find, if that makes
I often
sense.
I often say to people, they'll say, oh, what do you do for a living? I'm a spiritual teacher, and they'll say I'm an atheist, and I'll say, how's it working out for you? Is that giving you more possibilities? Is that
Right.
making you more creative and imaginative? So like I hear you, and yes, of course, everything that we're talking about today could be seen through the lens of quantum physics. It's
Right.
just boring, and
Yeah, there's no need for it. I mean,
right. There's no need
we're
for
on
it.
the advanced edge of it. We don't need to know the how. We
Right.
don't need to, but that's something that will reach a point eventually. It may take thousands of years where, okay, forget about it. We don't need to know how. We know it
Yeah.
is.
Yeah.
We are. So,
And
John,
even just say,
well, go ahead.
even the idea that we are in the process of granting sentience to AI more than we are microbes and
Mhm.
plants and rainforests and mountains is what's wrong.
Well,
You
and,
know,
and and eventually at some point it could be right. I mean, I get what you're saying with that, but there's so much I don't understand about consciousness, And
Sure.
there, I'm open to all forms of consciousness, and any level of consciousness awakening makes this universe better to me. And I see the flaws in it, but yeah, I agree with you
And when
100%.
I say it's wrong, I just mean like can we do that too? Could we
Exactly.
actually grant the natural world aliveness?
Yes.
You know,
To
uh,
walk through the world and see that rock and think it's alive, and that plant is alive, and to think that there's a consciousness with that ant that's more than what we would suspect for just an insect.
and
It's
there
wonderful.
really,
It's
really
a
is. There really is.
wonderful thing. And it's shocking and overwhelming to think of, there's trillions of humans in history, right? But we're talking about trillions and trillions and trillions of living things on this planet. And this is just one planet, and trillions of planets, and all that living consciousness. Just, it's so much, it's so amazing. And so, Jonathan, thank you for joining us. And everybody can find more by going to jonathanhammond.com. And you're going to be teaching a class with Shift Network.
Yep. Yeah,
People
that'll
can
start in
find there.
September. It's not announced yet, but if you go to my website, it'll be on in a couple weeks. But
Yeah.
yeah,
And the
that's gonna
book
be
is The Shaman's
right.
Mind. I'll have a link in the description. It's been a real honor to speak with you. Thank you for what you're doing, taking us to the next level. I appreciate it immensely. And welcome to the Reality Revolution.
Aloha, everyone, and thank you. Thanks so much for being here.